Now you're on.
It's so nerve-wracking when it's so few people. I've always but I like having the podium. I need something between me and speaking. Yeah.
However,
You're live.
I know I'm live, but I'm waiting for my audience. Yeah. Well, good afternoon. Thank you for being here. Obviously, don't have the presentation up, so you're just going to have to hear me blab a little bit. And this is called The Unpredictability of Grief, How to Move Forward. I think to joy, or to joy maybe. And so I'm just going to start by telling my story and how I became someone who is very involved in the grief process, and then I'm available for any questions. So I like to start by saying that when I was born, I was given this very nice, lovely gift box that was wrapped very, very quaintly and perfectly. And when you open that gift box, it had this whole nice list of here are the things to do in order to be successful in life. And I carried that with me for a very long time. And some of the things that came on that box for me were you get good grades, you go to college, maybe you meet a partner. Most likely it's the should. You should meet a partner, you settle down, you get married, you have a house with a white picket fence, 2.4 children, 3.2 dogs. You get into a good job, you stay in that job for 30 or 40 years with the same company, then you retire. That's when you travel, and then you live happily ever after. And so I bought into that, and I was like, this is great. And so I got to college, and I thought, awesome, I'm going to do law school. I'm going to be a refugee lawyer. I know what I'm doing. I did it, and I got out of school and went, I don't think so. So there's the first moment where my checklist was not jiving. And I thought, now what do I do? Like, I didn't meet someone in college. I'm not getting a house. I don't have my career, everything that I had. So I decided to travel, as some of you already know. And so I did the travel, which you're supposed to do after retirement first. And then still didn't know what to do, and I dabbled in this and dabbled in that. And next thing you know, I'm in my 30s, still not married, don't have a house, don't have a career. My friends are getting married, having children, some are divorcing, and I thought, who doesn't go back to school in their 30s to get a master's? Finally, getting my first checklist, second box, I guess, because I did go to college. So I got my master's, then I bought a place, excellent. We're doing this. Trust me, this will all tie into the grief in a moment. And then I thought, okay, I'm making it. My successful life is coming together. I'm very excited about this. Oof, I'm a little late of a bloomer, right? Did not doing this in my 30s. This is amazing. And then there was the whole, oh yeah, maybe I should start looking for a partner. And by that point in time, there was this online dating thing that was very popular, and I just didn't know what that was. And I thought, forget it, I don't want to do that. And then I started getting what I call pings, these little signs that kept saying, like, go do this. No, I'm going to have my glass of wine, wrap Christmas presents, and watch Christmas Vacation. I'm very happy doing that. That's like my thing. And I kept getting these signs saying, just try this. And so I said, fine, I will try this online thing that people are doing. And so the second date I went on happened to be where I met my husband, Sean. He was my second date. I was his last date. He was done, didn't want to do it anymore, and we felt like it was an immediate soul connection. Now, he would say that he fell in love on the first date, and I said, no, that's not possible. But by the second date, I was like, oh, okay, this is for real. And we felt like we'd known each other for so long, we could finish each other's sentences. We used to joke that we were the male-female version of each other because we were just very in sync. And so finally, yes, 35 years old, and here comes my checklist, my successful life, my gift box is finally happening. And with that, I was engaged. We were engaged in 5 weeks. We were married 8 months later, bought our house, finally, check, check, check. Found out we were gonna have a kid, check, check, check. Oh my goodness, now all we have to do is stay together, grow old together, retire, and then go travel. And then 4 days before our second wedding anniversary, Sean ended up dying by suicide. And I wish I had my image, because my image is showing an A-bomb going off, because it was just, there went my checklist. There went my successful life in one day. He went missing for 6 hours, and it ended with him ending his life. And there went all of our dreams, everything that we were working towards. We had just been planning during COVID, just been planning a vacation, what we were going to do when COVID was over. Our son had just turned 1, and in an instant, all of that disappeared. Now, being the Aries I am, I immediately decided, I'm going to take this grief thing that you're handing me, and I'm going to get through it. I'm going to blast through it, because, oh my goodness, this feels horrible. I have a child I have to raise. I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I'm going to take this on, and I'm going to blow through it. And also, I wish that I had my image for you all to see, because it is of a group of people laughing hysterically. Because that is what all the therapists I was around, all the people who have been in grief and loss, just laughed and said, aren't you cute? Because the truth is that grief is so unpredictable that it is like a roller coaster. And you have no idea, but you can't see where it's going. You can't see what's happening. And it can hit you at any point in time. Do I need to speak a little louder? Or is it okay? So it could be that you're just getting your groceries. You can be getting your groceries and think it's fantastic, and then you're just stopping at Costco. It could be that someone tells you, oh, aren't you so excited for them because they just found out they're pregnant? And you go, oh, that's great, but my family, my checklist said we were going to have 2 kids, and I just have 1. I don't understand. And then you're crying and banging on your steering wheel and screaming your heart out. Grief is so awful. However, the thing about grief is that it really, the saying goes that grief is the inverse of love. So the amount of love that you have, and loss doesn't just have to be the death of someone. Grief doesn't come just from that type of loss. Grief can come around from anything, a move, a change in job, just even a relationship changing. There can be grief with all of that. And so the amount of love and dedication that's been given into that is the amount of grief that you're going to feel. And so what I figured out is I needed a toolbox, and I had to slow down just a little bit. So my toolbox, and the other thing about toolboxes that's kind of annoying when it comes to this, because there's nothing fun about grief. There's nothing enjoyable. There's nothing that is like, oh, this is amazing, unless you get through it. And you can't circumvent it. You can't stop it. You can get stuck in it for sure. You can absolutely get stuck, but you have to get through it. And so what I found was I had a toolbox, and I was like, great, journaling works. I'm going to journal every day. Okay, put that in my toolbox. Doctors are telling me you need to eat better, you need to exercise. I had some choice words for them at first, because I thought, you go and run, and you go eat well. I can't eat anything right now. Like, you go do that. The truth is, it's very important. Add that to my toolbox. Went to a smash it room. That's great. I advise that for anybody and everybody. Take a bat. They give you different weapons that you can use. Yes, weapons in a safe environment, always. And I got to smash out some things. That was great. As I have already mentioned, I screamed a lot. That car is no longer in my possession, thank goodness, but I hope the next person might sage it or have it blessed, because who knows what my last car had to deal with my grief. But the thing with that is that the same thing that I would try every day didn't work. There's always something different that might work. And then one thing that works for one person isn't going to work for another person, which makes grief even harder. Because then, even if you're trying, like me, I can say, here are some things that I've tried that's worked. Some of these things have worked for other people, and they haven't done anything for them. And so the main thing there is to really, you have to get really aware of yourself. What is yourself telling you? How are you getting through specifically your days? A big thing that I'll say, and I did have a nice picture of my 5-year-old up for all of you, so you'll just have to wait for the next presentation for that. because you need an anchor. There has to be something to anchor you to this life. So not just individuals in my situation who've had a loved one die by suicide, but other individuals who've had big loss can also have suicidal ideation. I personally have not had that, but I can absolutely see why people do. Grief is isolating. It can feel, because of the unpredictability, predictability creates safety, right? Creates a sense of I know what's coming, but after having any sort of loss, this type of grief can make you feel very uneven. So my son became my anchor. He was the reason that I would get up out of bed, because I thought I have to get through this in order to be available to him. Sometimes that getting up just meant that I got up and went to the bathroom. Sometimes that meant that I was just maybe trying to eat something, which was very hard at first. And other days, it's great, we can get up and we can go do our day. But the point is you can't force it. You can't force it. You can't push it. It's like this thing that just sits with you. And it's going to be with you. The more that I could understand and accept, there's so much acceptance that has to come with this. And if it was another talk, I'd go into all of like the what are they called? Data. What are they? I'm looking at you because you know. Depression, anger.
Oh, the stages.
Stages of grief. I don't really follow those because I think that they're not really stages. But part of the acceptance piece is also understanding that this grief is just, it's going to be with you. When you have something major happen in your life, it's going to be with you. But I did have someone once say, and I really liked this, because I call my grief my dance partner. It used to be a ball and chain, but I upgraded it to a dance partner. But it used to be that the grief gets less. And I would say, I heard someone say, it's not that the grief gets less, it's just that we grow around it. And so by being able to go through the tunnel, by being able to work through the emotions, sit with them, again, horrible feelings, but by being able to do that, then you can start to zoom out, because grief makes you zoom in. And then all you can see is what's nearly in front of you, the loss, there was a lot that happened in my particular situation, but you get so zoomed in to just being able to put one foot in front of the other every day that you forget to zoom out. And when you have that capability to zoom out, then you can start to see that there's more left in this life for all of us, and there are ways to find that joy. Hopefully I touched everything. That was pretty much, I should have just had my thing up so I could make sure that I did this. Oh, and the other thing that I like to say, I'm so sorry for the viewers online because I'm a little disheveled, but at the beginning of all this with that gift box, right, that creates a sense of predictability, whereas here's what a successful life looks like. And if I, like I said, after college wasn't feeling like it really jived, then it became an idea of, well, something's wrong with me, not something's wrong with the box I was given. And after this situation, what I found is that life is more like an ocean. It can be tumultuous. You're in a squall. You have no idea what's happening. The things that you thought were going to work out aren't working out. Or it could be completely serene and calm, like a reef. And what's predictable about it is us. That we trust ourselves, that when we get through life situations, it doesn't even have to be a loss of the magnitude that I've experienced, but when you can get through that, you learn that you can trust yourself, that you can handle whatever is going to happen, because there's more. Like, life does not take a break. It does not stop. I've asked several times, could you just, please, I feel like I've had enough. I've hit a quota for a lifetime, but it doesn't work that way. And so when we can shift our mentality to that, then we're the ones who are predictable and can handle whatever happens. Thank you. Any questions? Yeah, oh, thanks. Okay, you can clap. Yeah, you can snap. Can someone do the...
Yeah. When it happened, did you find for yourself, was it more helpful for people to reach out to you or leave you alone?
Good question. I found it helpful for people to reach out, more to say, thinking about you, I'm here for you when you're ready. I got a lot of, how can we help you? And what can we bring to you? What can we do? And I didn't even have the capacity in organization to be able to even tell people So just having people who could reach out, and I would say, like, just keep doing it, because I'll forget. There were times where I would have like 50 or 75 text messages, and I'd go, oh, I guess I'm supposed to respond to people. So just people letting me know, hey, I'm thinking about you, was the most help at that time. Although I did appreciate the food, like for a year, people were dropping food off on our doorstep. Again, still COVID. So.
Well, I think that's important too. You know, people. So, you know, you've expressed so eloquently how you've gone through this process, but the people around you have gone through it too.
Absolutely.
And so we all have shared in various stages. There's that word again, of grief. You know, and when we say that, I think, you know, people like to think linearly, like, you know, I'm now, and you in particular, right? You know, very ordered.
Yes.
I'm in stage 1, now I'm progressing to stage 2, but you found that that's not really how it works. It's very cyclical, and you go back and forth and wax and wane, but we do too. And through our grief, we also don't know how to respond, right? I think it's very normal for people to say, well, I'm here for you, tell me what you need. You don't know what you need.
Right.
You know, so I think this is more of commentary, as I want to do, but you know, we need to, you know, take a lesson from this to say, hey, you know, I don't know what to do for you, but I'm here.
Exactly.
For whenever.
Well, because it's fix it, right?
Yeah.
It's we just culturally, we tend to like to fix it. No one wants to see someone in pain. No one wants to see them hurting.
Right.
So much of it became like, how could you leave this young son? Like, how could you do that? What, you know, people, you get desperate. How do we fix this? And I'll say initially I was like, you can't, because no one can bring him back. No one can bring him and put him right back next to me, and we can continue on the trajectory that we were on. And so you do have to let go to the linear. My therapist laughed at me several times when I was like, I feel like I've gone back 5 steps. And he said, what did you think? You just keep going? I'm like, yeah, right? Can we just, no. And that's why it is so unpredictable. And that's why it can be so hard. And to be open to, I am a different person than I was before. And just like I've had to rebuild a life, you know, around what has happened, I've also had to rebuild myself. And that's been, that one, I mean, it's hard, and the thing, it's so hard, all of it is hard, but it's doable, I guess, is my main message. But grief begets grief. So if there's grief that any person has had in their past that hasn't been addressed or healed, it's just gonna compound and make it worse. So the next loss will get bigger, and the next loss will get bigger. If there are, and I call them negative experiences versus trauma, because one experience for one person could impact someone differently than another. But if you don't heal those negative experiences, all of that comes right back up when you're like really diving deep. And I didn't want to, I was like, what is this diving deep into grief? No, just let's look at the main event. But I found through focusing on the main event that I had to go back and start actually really working through other things.
So now that you're, you know, having said all that, right, you know, how would you guide someone going through something similar?
Yeah, it'd be baby steps to start. I mean, I think that's the most annoying part. But I think really the awareness, becoming aware of yourself and really understanding, if you're in the acute, and I say phases, I say phases. There's the acute phase of like, it has just happened. Some major loss has just happened. And that's like, you're in shock, you're just working through things, and at that point in time, you're just really in survival. That's like Maslow's low, and you are just in survival. And then you get to a point where you kind of have to branch between the two. Your brain, I won't go into the neuroscience of it, but basically you come out of the shock, and then you're half in this adulting world where you go to work and you have bills you have to pay and people have moved on, but you are still stuck with this massive thing of grief. And then I have what I call finding the collateral beauty, which is when you can zoom out. And I would say that the first step really is to start collecting those tools and to be patient, which again, Aries, not very patient. And so being able to really just, you know, if it is, I do believe in therapy, so I'm a big fan of like finding a good grief therapist. If finding a good grief group, there are lots of support groups for very different things. So finding people who've been through what you have, even though the details might be different, is very helpful because you don't have to explain yourself. You don't have to try and help other people understand where you're coming from. So that's where I would kind of start, is just finding people, not even that you have to express what's going on, but and find that anchor. Find something that's going to get you out of bed.
How did you deal with the anger? It's not a linear timeline.
No.
What helped you to get to where you are now? And
Yeah.
are you done with the anger? Does it resurrect its ugly head once in a while? How does...
So my anger was different. And it's interesting that you bring up anger, because I recently was speaking with someone who just lost his father, and he was like, he was just 2 weeks out, I'm so angry. And he's like, when does the anger go away? And I was like, oh, now I'm the one laughing. Like, well, so my anger was different. I didn't have the anger towards Sean that he died. I had the anger of, awesome, now I'm left to do this on my own, and I don't know what I'm doing, and I still don't know what I'm doing, but you figure it out. I also had anger at other people in the situation, and felt that, like, for some of the people who are here, I don't know for online, but I had people who were trying to take legal action toward me. I had people who were talking about trying to get custody of my son. I had people who were trying to block me from being able to keep and then sell my house, people who were trying to come for money. So it left me feeling very exposed and vulnerable, and had to like beef up security and talk to sheriffs and all sorts of stuff. And so my anger was around these people, mostly because I was like, how can you do this? And I found out some things posthumously too of what Sean's friends were saying about me, and it was very hurtful. Just as a side, they were like telling him to divorce me and trying to tell him that I was going to leave him and he should just leave me first. So those are just some snippets of it. So my anger was a lot towards them. And for that group of people, I got to a point where I just said, he is not angry at them anymore. Like, I got angry at a lot of, Sean had experienced childhood trauma. He had multiple opportunities that dropped through for him that just continued to add to his stress. And so I was angry at all these people, and I thought, well, where he is right now, and that's, again, we won't get into the spiritual side, but I said, he is not angry at them anymore, so why am I holding on to that anger? So that's one piece of just making that decision of, I don't want to hold on to this anger anymore. I still get angry about my situation sometimes, especially when it's hard, or when I want to believe that I don't want special treatment being a single parent, a true single parent, but other times I'm like, I kind of do want special treatment being a single parent, and that's not always possible. But the other thing I have found is movement was the biggest one for me to get the anger out. So the smash it room, the screaming, not holding it in my body. I wrote lots of letters, to very angry letters, and then I burned them. It's like, I don't want this. I went through a lot of anger with my therapist. I have also had my own tantrums that were inappropriate and not in the right place, where I had to pull myself back and go, this isn't about this person or what's happening. This is about me not like really working through my feelings. And then just having that awareness of, oh, it's bubbling, so maybe I can go do something preventative, or preemptive, I guess would be. So if I go work out, or if I go for a walk, or if I go punch a bag or go something, so I can get that anger out. So I feel like the movement was the biggest one for me with anger.
Yeah. So with that, right, there's a child. And so, and the child is very, very young.
Very young.
And has really no memory, right?
Mm-hmm.
How has that affected your relationship with your son and your son's development?
Oh gosh, you're going for it.
I am.
You're going.
I am.
You're going for it.
And you can tell me to stop it.
No, this is helpful. I mean, I find that being able to share hopefully is helpful to another person who can either forward information or let someone know like you're not alone, right? Because it is ridiculously hard. So I will give you an example. Recently, I killed a bug in my house, and he got so upset. He's 5 now, and he got so upset, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, I know we're trying to be nicer to animals and bugs. I don't like them in the house, and I got it, and he just finally looked at me and he goes, Mom, that was my job. And I was like, your job? What? No, it's my job. And he goes, no, I do the dad jobs. And I went, oh. He goes, I'm the dad, you're the mom, I do the dad jobs. This is very common for kids, and especially like little boys in their relationship with their moms. So he has asked me, like, when are we getting another dad? We have pictures up. He can go. We've done picnics at the cemetery. Sean is buried at Fort Logan because he's a veteran, was a veteran. But I have had to work through, like, he's in play therapy right now to try and help with that. So my big thing, and he's going to be a kid, I know eventually he's going to be like, can you stop asking me how I'm feeling, Mom? Because that's a big thing. Sean internalized a lot of what he was feeling. He expressed and told me a lot, which I'm grateful for. But my son is just like his dad in that he feels energy shift. He will take it on, and I'm like, what is happening? We were just fine, and now we're not. So we try and keep the memory of his dad alive, and he gets to see, I tell him stories, and that's how I kind of help him, but there is a big gap. We had a breakthrough a few months ago where he and I just sat and cried with each other, and he just kept saying he's not coming back. And I said, no, bud, he's not coming back. And so there are resources for language for appropriate ages. I've let him know. He knows the word suicide. He knows that's how his dad died. He does not know the method because that's not age appropriate. It is advised that you be honest with kids because they fill in the gaps. So even now he has asked me what was the method, and I'm like, one day I will tell you. And that seems to work for right now because he was coming up with all sorts of ideas. It was monsters took him to go have s'mores, and then his dad didn't come back. He knows his dad died in the mountains of Colorado, so he went to the mountains, and then a boulder fell on him, and that's why he didn't come back. And so a lot of the research now is saying you just have to be as concrete as possible. And for me, I'm just trying to say there's some stuff I can't tell you yet, but I will. And to let him know that. I don't know if that really answered your question because it's different for every kid.
Yeah, and then you kind of morphed into this whole other discussion, which I find very interesting, where he said to you he does the dad jobs, but when are we getting a new dad? Is he tired of doing that? Have you asked him that? That could be what's running through his head, right?
It could be. What's common is called parentification.
Yeah.
And so he feels very responsible for me. And so that's where I'm trying to be very, very careful, like using some of the buzzwords, with enmeshment or codependency of trying to tell him like, oh, this is a mama thing. Like this is a mama job. That's a buddy job. And so I try and separate them for him. It does impact his development. He sees other kids. He wants to know where his dad is. He adores other dads, which sometimes throws other dads off because they're like, what? Who is this kid who's jumping on me right now? And then, but he's had some great coaches who adore him, and he has like really 2 best buddies now. So he's getting that feeling. But it sits with him like all the time. And if you think, I know you have a question, just one sec. If you think about things now that he's in kindergarten, it's like, I've heard, working in schools, I've heard teachers who are like, who brought you to school today, mommy or daddy? Or he's riding his bike. This is like one of my favorites actually. But he's riding his bike around a lake, and I'm walking, and he goes up ahead of me, and we have a whole deal. We talk about safety, everything like that. And he got up in front of me, and of course it rattles other adults that his adult is not with him right there. And someone said, well, where's your mommy and daddy? And he's on his bike, and he goes, well, my dad's in heaven and my mom's back there walking. And then just kept riding,
I'm sure.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've had other people, I had someone once who's like, he's so independent. And I was like, yep. he's going to be, you know, so, yes.
So my biggest fear, and I've kind of talked with you about it, but I feel safe now,
Hmm.
here with everybody, because we're with him so much, or he is with us so much, that one day he's gonna ask me how his father died, you know. So what, I think you told him that suicide, daddy stopped breathing,
Mm-hmm.
but you're saying to be truthful, and so at what point does he learn what suicide is? When
He
a
knows
person
that-
makes a choice to
Yeah.
take their life, because there, what would you recommend if he asks me? Because we've talked about death, we've talked, you know, got pictures of his dad around. His dad is not hidden somewhere in the closet. But that's one of my biggest fears, is to be confronted with that question.
So
Is it like,
for-
oh, go ask your mom?
For people who know me directly and who know him, you can always just say that's a question for your mom. You can't say that, and that's fine. He knows that suicide means his dad chose, but he doesn't have that higher level of right. He's still a very like kids are black and white concrete thinkers. So, the method will come later. I won't say how exactly his dad died until I feel like it's appropriate and he can handle that. And sometimes with kids, you just have to keep repeating the same thing. Your dad chose to make his body stop working and to stop breathing. Yeah. I'm surprised no one's asking about signs. No one's, I know, you guys, like, usually that's the first thing I get asked. Did you see signs? Did you, I know this is about grief, but usually I get asked, like, anyway.
Then they have to read your book.
Yes,
Yeah.
please do.
So that's, oh, go ahead.
So does the grief includes a shame and sadness and whatever?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Guilt, shame. I mean, and again, I can go into the details. I don't know. I mean, the word spirals that you can get into, it just snowballs. Could I have been a different wife? Did I cause this? We had an argument the day that he died. Could I have handled that differently? What could I have done? The truth in all of that is that's very common, no matter what kind of situation. So much shame, so much guilt. It must have been something that I did. I had people who said that to me, that I was the one who caused him to die. So I found that I had to stop thinking about it about me and start thinking about it for him. And the way that worked for me was to say, it is not easy to take your life or take a life. It is not easy. And to get to a point where you feel that the only thing that's going to help you is to actually end your life, to me, it means you have to be in such immense pain that it is unlivable. Like, there is nothing to alleviate any of the pain. And when I could shift and say, I probably did contribute. Did I cause? No. Did stressors in our marriage contribute? Yes. Did his childhood experiences contribute? Yes. I say that and I know now we're getting more into suicide, but for suicide, I say it's a momentary decision with a lifetime of things that are contributing to it, or events that are contributing. And so, and in my experience with the suicide support group, that seems to be a thing that is lived and talked about with other survivors. That the pain just becomes so immense that this is the only way they can see to actually end the pain. And Sean knew about therapy. He knew that there were these other things. He just didn't think that any of it would work for him. He was too broken for it to actually do anything. So tons of shame, tons of guilt.
On a spiritual level, that was something that I've been struggling for a long time. And when my uncle committed suicide, I was told straightforward that he goes to hell.
Mm-hmm.
And that part, I think, bothered me the most.
Mm-hmm.
And
I hear you. And so I haven't had anyone directly say that to me. I have had people say, oh yes, that's the belief that I grew up with. And I think, and it's hard, I'll say in your situation, you had someone who was, correct me if I'm wrong, but you had someone who was in a position
He
to
was a
be,
priest.
yes, okay, well, I didn't know if you were like, okay. So being a priest who's there to guide other people and to lead them spiritually, I find that makes it harder, right? Because it's supposed to be someone who's a guide. I don't believe that. I find it very hard. This is, and again, you guys, I love this. I almost feel like you all need like a beverage or something for this because we're getting deep. To me, what happened was, in looking at my relationship with God, I got to a point where I said, wait a minute. Are you telling me that God is here, we're good, we're on this path, I know, like, Father Seraphim will talk about the ants, that's how I or I don't know if you guys have ever seen, is it Men in Black, where, like, the aliens and the marbles? That's what I always envisioned. That were the little pieces. And so God's here, and He's good for you and everything, unless you're in the most emotional pain you've ever been in your life, and then He pieces out and is like, nope, sorry, for you and that pain, no. You have succumbed to your pain. You have decided that this is the way out, even though that's not what I want for you, and you're feeling disconnected to me. But you know what? I'm gonna go over here because there are people over here who aren't doing that. Like, that just doesn't make sense to me at all, especially if you're talking about a God who loves us and is available to us at all times and is there with us even when we're not connected to God. It makes no sense to me. So for me, in my belief system, I don't see it that way. And the people who do proclaim that, they're looking at that nice little box with the bow and the predictability. Here's the black and white. And for me, and what I've been shown is, it is gray, it is blue, it is red, like, you never know. And for someone also to say that, I'd say, have you ever lost someone this way? Because how is it that someone's whole life can be completely ignored, and their judgment, which we say should be the whole life, right, our movie reel, how can you say that their judgment is based off of one decision at the end of their life? That's the part, and I know we have a different spiritual leader in the room, so I feel like I feel that way, but that's for me. That's how I looked at it. Like, it just didn't make sense to me that Sean was such a beautiful soul. He's so much more than his death, and he had a moment that he decided to end his pain, and to think that God abandoned him in that moment just doesn't make sense to me. Now, I understand that we talk about the idea of us abandoning God when it comes to the judgment day, but I don't see that either. I just don't.
The point is that Christ said every sin can be forgiven, period. Anyone who says every sin except this one, whatever this is, suicide, sexuality, whatever, they're all wrong. Period.
But traditionally, the church did not bury.
Absolutely it has.
It has.
It has. Because...
Now, and I will say, go ahead and explain. I will say that I know I have a little rift with the church's explanation on this, but we can go there. I'm just saying, go like, we've talked about it.
The church distinguishes between those who die at their own hand because pain, mental illness, which is what even pain is, and those who do it out of conviction. And the only ones really who do it out of conviction are found in literature.
Okay, that's fair. You and I haven't gone there, but yes, that's fair.
Yeah, you can look, Crime and Punishment. I can't think of the character who kills himself, but he does it out of conviction.
And that, to be your point, a lot of TV does that too, and it's sensationalized. And don't get me wrong, I think that's the other thing when it comes specifically to suicide, is that there's a spectrum. Like, you can't find any. I went to the International Association for Suicide Prevention, their World Congress, and all the research, right? These are top researchers around the world, and their whole thing right now is how do we find that algorithm? How do we find that equation that will help us prevent suicide? And I'm a believer of like, no, you got to start with the littles. You have to start with healing those hurts from your past. You have to start with telling people it's okay to talk about it, taking away the judgment, the shame, and the guilt. Because it is such a spectrum. You're going to find people who have planned. It's rare I see people plan for a long period of time, but people can plan for short periods of time. You can find people who are in the moment. You can find people, like, that's what makes it, again, so unpredictable.
I mean, a lot of people who plan are usually crying for help. And it is not so much an actual attempt as an expression of their pain that they're trying to get help for. The ones who are at the last moment decide. Those are the ones that are unpredictable, and you
don't
cannot
always share.
plan, you can't prevent, you can't do anything because it's a split-second decision. It may take a little time to execute, but the decision is made in a moment.
So at the risk of sounding too clinical here.
No, go for it.
You see a lot of suicidal ideation, suicidal tendencies, and when you find a person that has that thought process, you try to ascertain whether or not there's an active plan, because that's when it becomes an issue. And this is someone who, you're right, it's usually someone who is needing something, doesn't really want to, but has thought about it and talked enough about it that it is a cry for help. The unpredictability in the moment of the person that's behaviorally compromised in terms of health, mental illness or behavioral health illness, whatever the term is, that's the person we can't
you can't capture.
Because they are not talking. They are, and to Father's point, regarding the church and your belief, this person, how can a person who is ill be forsaken by God? How can that happen? That's totally in opposition to everything we have been taught and everything that we hold dear in terms of our belief. So I'm with you with that. The person that follows through on that action was a person who really did need the help but never asked.
And this is what I talked about earlier, suicide by Roman legionnaire. That required planning.
Right.
Well, and there are there are when I talk about planning, there are people who set in motion ideas, and again, there are people there have been stories of people who feel relief once they make that decision, because, and that's what I've said, like, when the decision is made, it's really hard to get someone back from that decision, because it's the way they know that they're going to end that pain. And to your point, Joanna, are you okay, Dr. Hill?
Joanna was good.
But to your point, I mean, I have a friend, her husband bought contacts that morning. Like I said, Sean and I, 2 days prior, were talking about where our next vacation was going to go. We were supposed to have lunch with his friends the day he died. Like, there's just, there's something that shifts and changes, and you can't, and that's why it's so hard. That's why I say prevention, for me, I think needs to start earlier and be more of a response than a reaction. There are individuals I've known of who have had more psychosis, and they've had, there are individuals I know in my support group who have gone and asked for support from our mental health structure facilities through hospitals and have been declined, and those individuals have ended up dead. So
right.
it's just such an array of different experiences that to say that we can just prevent and get rid of suicide, as much as I would love to. I mean, the first call I got was 3 weeks after Sean died about another person whose husband had died by suicide, and I was devastated because I was like, oh man, there's some irrational thought in my head that his death would be the last of all the suicides. That is clearly not what has happened.
when it happened with my uncle, it seems like my mom and I just totally shut down in that our own. So my question is actually right now to Father and you. When you have somebody who experienced something like that, how do you deal with it, knowing that your loved one is in pain? And I don't know, I mean, if I put you on the spot, just,
Everybody here went through it except for Destiny. These people all lived at our house practically. Right now, Linda and Hal are going through that. And Linda said something. She's grieving for the loss of her grandson, but she's grieving more for her daughter. That pain will never go away. I don't have anger, but I have pain for my daughter, for what happened in her life.
so in a way, do you model her more? Or do you kind of
Well,
stay back?
Have you met her?
Thank you.
Well, she's a mother. She's a mother.
But to be fair, like you are onto something. So I found out very quickly that I was a private griever. It took me a very long time and I used to be and it is hard for you all who knew me before and after, but I totally recognize that because I was a huggy person, I was lovey, let's get into each other's space, and then this happened and I was like, ooh, back off. Like I could not have people touch me. And I will say, I know that was difficult for my family because they wanted to grieve together. And that was hard for me, and I was not able. Oh, yeah, I know we're on time, right? Oh, yes, because there's another one after me.
You have to plug it.
Yes, of course. But I had to also try and explain to my family, like, I cannot grieve with you the way you need me to at this time. And I encourage them to grieve together.
So back to
Because,
that.
yes, the mothering was not working.
That's a really good point. Although she lived with us for a couple of months, she was on her own, so to speak. I had to find a way, therapy, my friends, to deal with that grief. Because no one that I knew had experienced that. So losing Sean was one thing, but it was more grieving, obviously to this day,
Yeah, yeah.
grieving what she lost. Especially since I've been married for 52 years. Why isn't she?
And that's, I think, the part too that, this experience
No, I
is
didn't mean to dig, because in my case, my mom, she talked, and she never wanted to talk about
Well,
it.
and Destiny has a question, so I want to hear
Yeah,
what you
go
have
ahead.
to say.
It comes up all the time. It
No, I was
doesn't- it
gonna
doesn't
say
go away.
that the experience, immediately it's like, oh, it's all about Al. It's, Al's loss, Al's spouse, Buddy's dad, all of that. But it's their loss too, right? And so sometimes I think we forget that as we try to work through the grieving process. For her, who is so affectionate, so, what did you say before, in your space, kind of, it is who she is, right? To be distanced,
Yeah.
it was adding another layer of trying to deal with grief for her.
Exactly.
So it's an entire community. I mean, you're right, we all lived through this. And for me, not knowing him as well, I feel it for you.
Yeah.
Clearly.
Yeah. No. And to your point, I mean, we tend to focus on the loss of the person, but
Right.
there's loss of the life that I had.
Yeah.
There's mourning over the life I have now. And again, I say that because I've had people who kind of are like, wait, but you have a good life. It's like, of course I do, but I can still mourn that the trajectory of my life has shifted greatly. Dusty, you had a question?
I kind of want to ask, I guess the room, but also specifically, like, did you experience a lot of, or any instances of what I might call like the emotion police of people questioning your response and then assuming things about your motives.
Oh, did I ever?
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Like,
it,
oh, you're not crying at the time I think you should, so
Yes.
you're, or you're not, that kind of
She's
thing.
not
Like,
handling it the
you
way she's
shouldn't
supposed
be
to.
feeling
Yeah.
angry yet. That should be like 4 months from now.
right. Or why am I not over it yet? Yeah. Or why am I not? So just a couple examples. And yes, that happens. And so when I see it on TV shows, I love British crime shows. And when they're like, the spouse isn't responding the way they're supposed to, I'm like, you can't do that. You can't do that. Yes. So just simple. I had someone at the one, so we had to do celebrations of life for Sean separately in different places because it was COVID. And someone came up to me at one and said, don't worry, you'll meet someone soon. You're a catch. And I was like,
Wow.
like, here is a slideshow of pictures of us, and that's what you think is appropriate. I was criticized at his actual memorial because I wasn't crying enough. I wasn't emotive enough. There are lots of things that I must not have cared about him. That I was trying to get, his family came to me and asked me for items of his. I said, you can have them. And then they said, you're clearly trying to get rid of him. You aren't, the reason why people wanted custody of my son is because they thought that I wouldn't share about Sean to him. Because I was going to erase all of that. I know they're like looking at me for time. So, yeah, and I'm always available for more questions. Here's the book I wrote called The Suicide Club, What to Do When Someone You Love Chooses Death. Definitely goes into more details. It's not just for anyone who's had loss from suicide, though. I just want to make that clear. There's some really good tidbits. And honestly, some of these things I don't remember writing. So that's how I know that they're good tidbits, because I think they came from someone else. Or my team, my team that's up there watching over me. And so there's some really good ways to try and work through and just to hopefully let other people know that you're not alone.
I thought of asking you before, but again, I do not know. Would you like to put that book on the bookstore?
Oh, I would love that. I mean, is that okay?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
got language in it.
Yeah. So do every other book.
Do
has
you
language
think
in
that
it,
all the
otherwise we can't
states
read it.
before us never had language?
They say Jesus got angry. So we have.
I think there's like 2 words,
They said
maybe
it in
3.
Greek.
Maybe
Yeah,
3.
that's okay.
That's okay. All right, thank you so
Thank
much for
you.
coming and for all of your questions.